Good afternoon, children. Today, again, I'm in front of camera with a new topic of geographical thought. Usha requested me to discuss development of geography in medieval period with a special reference to Arabian scholars. Hope it will be useful for you all. Surely, no one nation or group of people can claim all the achievements of our present civilization in general, and geography in particular. Present day civilization is actually the sum total of all past human efforts which have been accumulated over the long years of man's existence on earth. By looking at the human cultural history in this spirit, it would not be difficult to appreciate the positive role played by Arabs and Muslims in the advancement of knowledge during the Middle Ages. During the 4th century AD, Germanic groups invaded the Western Roman Empire in AD 476. These groups overthrew the last emperor in Rome and brought the empire to an end. Europe then entered into a new era called the Middle Ages or medieval times. This was a 1,000 years period between ancient and modern times. During the Middle Ages, Western Europe was divided into many kingdoms and Catholic Christianity, which influenced the society strongly. With the decline and fall of the Roman Empire, geography and geographical knowledges were neglected. In medieval Europe, from around AD 500 until after AD 1400, there was little use of encouragement of science or philosophy of any kind. This time in Europe is very often regarded as the Dark Age. Basically, medieval period ranging between 500 AD to 1750 AD, up to 500 to 1100 AD, we can say this is the Dark Age in Europe. And on the other hand, 800 to 1400 AD is the rise of, can be marked as the rise of Arabian scholars. 1400 to 1750 AD is the period of Age of Discovery. Meanwhile, though the base of geographical knowledge was preserved and expanded by Chinese and Islamic scholars, the Muslims had more advanced culture than most of the medieval Europe and had made great discoveries in various fields of study. They had also preserved many of the writings of ancient Greeks, Roman, and other Oriental civilizations. With the rise of Islamic power in the Middle East and the Mediterranean in the 7th and 8th centuries AD, centers of scholarship emerged throughout this region, including Baghdad, Damascus, Cairo, and Granada. Here, surviving Greek and Roman texts were translated into Arabic by scholars such as Al-Batani, Al-Farghani. The requirement that Islamic religious faithful should undertake at least one pilgrimage to Mecca created a demand for travel guides. It also brought scholars from all over the world, Arab world, into contact with another stimulating considerable debate over different philosophical views of the world and of people's relationship with nature. In the field of geography, the Muslim scholars have made significant contribution in the field of mathematical, physical, and regional geography. Their knowledge was based on information gathered on the works of Greeks and other Oriental civilizations. Through these observations and analytical reasoning, they made noteworthy interpretations on different phenomena occurring over the surface of the earth, especially in the fields of climatology, geomorphology, cartography, and so on. If we talk about the sources of information, it appears that most of the Muslim geographers followed the scientific method while compiling their works. There were three main sources of information, namely the relevant available literature, personal observations made during their own travel, and the information gathered from reliable persons about their land, for which the other two methods were not enough. They were passionate for traveling, which is evident from the fact that they believed in the collecting information themselves. Examples may be cited of Al-Idrisi, 1100 to 1166 AD, travels in South, North and West Europe; Ibn Hackles, 1943 to 969 AD, journeys to eastern part of Europe; Albiruni is 1973 to 1050 AD, travels in India; and finally, Ibn Battuta, 1304 to 1368 AD, travels which covered far away places like India and China, along with the entire Muslim world. The Muslim geographic thought that evolved during the Middle Ages can be viewed from two perspectives. In the first case, the contributions in geography were highly influenced by the works of writings of Oriental civilizations, namely Persians, Indians, and Greeks. The second perspective holds more importance, as here the purpose was not only to correct the wrong concepts passed down from previous civilizations, but also make their own innovative contributions. The Muslim scholars in Middle Ages made remarkable contributions to the geographical scholarships. Their contribution is of such an importance that some of the theories and concepts given by them still hold an important place in the philosophy of geography. As already stated that the scholars of Muslim world had more wider and enriched horizons, the information thus provided was more realistic in nature. This becomes more important as during Middle Ages the Christian world was undergoing one of its darkest period, and where no new substantial advancement was made. Some of the major contributions of Muslim scholars have been discussed here, like Al-Balkhi. He collected climatic data from the accounts of various Arab travelers and prepared the world's first climatic atlas based on that data, entitled Kitab al-Askal in 1921. Al-Masudi, another great Arabian scholar, he was another important scholar who hailed from Baghdad. He was a geographer, a historian, a world traveler, with a prolific writer, and a prolific writer, we can say. He wrote on diverse themes, and his important works include Mehraj al-Duhab, Kitab ul-Aswat, Kitab Akhbar Jaman. Al-Masudi described the weather conditions of places he visited. He had a clear idea of the spherical shape of the earth. In the field of human geography, he tried to study the relationship between human beings and the environment and explain the impact of environment on the mode of life and attitude of people. He even divided the world into 7 regions on the basis of language. Albiruni. He was a Tajik by race and Persian by culture. His main interests include astronomy, mathematics, chronology, physics, medicine, and history. He was a prolific writer. Books include Kitab al-Hind, al-Quanan, al-Masudi, and Tariqul Hind. He has written Kitab al-Hind in 1030 AD. It is regarded as his monumental work, which deals with the geography of India. He describes the processes, shape, the landforms under normal conditions, and even identifies the significance of rounded stone in alluvial deposits in the northern part of the Himalaya. He mentioned that the distribution of rainfall in the peninsular region is controlled by the Eastern and Western Ghats. He provided detailed information about the source of Indus and explained the phenomena of floods in its basin. He gave the description of city of Kannauj. He has provided an accurate account of the season of India, describing the nature of the monsoon. Ibn Sina, another scholar who is credited to have made significant contribution to geomorphology, is Ibn Sina. He gave the idea of landscape erosion when he observed that the stream cut down their valleys when flowing down the mountains. He further stated that the streams own down the mountains in a slow but a steady process. He even examined the presence of fossils in the rocks in high mountains. Another leading scholar, AlIdris, of 12th century, his most important contribution is his famous book, Amusement for Him Who Desired to Travel Around the World, which was written in the year of 1154. His world map is considered as his most important contribution to geography. His map was based on a rough rectangular projection. He had studied Ptolemy's work. His description of Sicily is perhaps the most detailed one, and it is of great historical importance. AlIdris traveled over a great part, including a great part of world, including Spain, France, England, Sicily, Morocco, Asia Minor, and interior parts of Africa. He described the course of many rivers, including Danube and Niger, with precision. He did not agree with the Greek classification of the world into 5 climatic divisions and provided a more sophisticated classification based on climate. One of the most greatest Muslim traveler of his time was Ibn Battuta. He spent 28 years in travel and crossed a distance of more than 75,000 miles. His primary interest was in people, though he was described the physical conditions of various regions that he visited. His description of house types and buildings materials in desert is very interesting and informative. Through his experience, he labels Morocco as the best of the countries. His book Rila provides an insight into soils, agriculture, economy, and political history of the then Muslim world. Ibn Khaldun was basically a historian, another great Muslim scholar, but his writings also have been important as they were based on travel. His most important work is known as Muqaddimah. In his writings, Ibn Khaldun has mentioned that the northern hemisphere is the more densely populated than the southern. He has stated that the population along the equator is sparse, but there is an increasing concentration away from it up to 60 degrees. Further away, there is little or no population. He emphasized the role of fertile land in the region of origin of settlements. He has argued that the origin of the larger cities have always been in the form of small settlements. Ibn Khaldun is considered as one of the early environmental determinists, as he tried to correlate man and his environment in a scientific way. He is also credited of establishing political geography in the Middle Period, where he discussed the rise and fall of dynasties and empires. He formulated the first concept of life cycle of the states. Now, we'll talk about the contribution of Arabian scholars in different branches of geography. So first, we will discuss the contribution of Arabian geographer in the field of mathematical geography. The Arabian scholars were highly influenced by Greek ideas about the shape and size of the earth. They considered the earth as the center of the universe, around which seven planets revolved. They made use of Ptolemy's prime meridian to calculate time and longitudes. This meridian was considered to pass through the Fortunate Islands. The scholars made use of the shadow of the sun to determine latitudes when the shadow happens to be on the meridian. Al-Battam is said to have measured the Earth's circumference as 27,000 miles. Physical geography. In physical geography, first climatology we'll discuss. The first climatic atlas is credited to Al-Balakhi, who gathered climatic idea and information from Arab travelers and prepared the first climatic atlas of the world. Kitab ul Askal in the year of 1921. One of them divided the world into 14 climatic regions. His name is Al-Maqdisi, who also presented the idea that the southern hemisphere was mostly an open ocean and most of the world's land area was in the northern hemisphere. The doctrine of environmental determinism found roots in the writings of Ibn Khaldun, Albiruni, and Al-Masudi, who described the influence of climatic conditions on the lifestyle of people. Ibn Khaldun further opined that people residing in the warmer parts of the earth were more passionate. Geographers like Al-Istakhiri and Al-Maqdisi divided the world into different climatic regions using the temperature and rainfall indices. Now we will talk about the contribution of the Muslim geographers in the field of geomorphology. Al-Biruni in his Kitabul Hind opined that the stones become round because they had fallen along torrential mountain streams. He also discovered that alluvial soils become finer in texture further away from the mountain. Ibn Sina keenly observed the works of agents of denudation and ascertained that mountain streams erode the slope. The highest peaks occurs when the rocks are especially resistant to erosion. The mountains are immediately exposed to the process of wearing down as soon as they rise up. Al-Maqdisi, in his book, The Best Division for the classification of region, divided Syria into 4 geomorphological zones running parallel to the Mediterranean Sea. Al-Masudi refers to the changing relationship between land and sea. He even talks with reference to a geographical cycle and categorically identifies 3 stages of river, youth, maturity, and old stage. He further establishes his point by stating that these 3 stages are similar to those found even in the lives of plant and animal. If we talk about the contribution of Muslim scholars in the field of biogeography, then Abu Jaid al-Ansari, Abu Said al-Azmai, Ikhwan al-Safa are some of the noteworthy Arab scholars who contributed in the field of plant and animal geography. Al-Khwarizmi even made an attempt to classify and distribute the natural vegetation of the Arabian Peninsula. In the field of human geography, Arabians contributed a lot. If we talked about cultural geography, Ibn Khaldun divided the population of the world into 2 categories, nomadic and sedentary, and argued that nomadic life preceded sedentary life of human beings. Scholars like Al-Maqdisi and Al-Istakhri wrote how physical characteristics of man, especially their physique, color, and the skin temperament and costumes differs from region to region. Al-Maqdisi, along with Al-Hamadami, even made reference of the fact that Arabian people spoke different dialects. Ibn Khaldun, in his book, relates that as the Arabs started traveling, they blended with the non-Arabian communities, which resulted in the distortion of their language. Some scholars also studied the distribution of other languages in other regions, especially Persia. In the field of urban geography, these scholars diverted their attention to the studies of urban settlements. They related the concepts of site and situation and even tried to classify town and cities on the basis of their size. Al-Khawarizmi, in his book Surat al-Ard, or Description of the Earth, fixed the coordinates of nearly 539 towns. In another monumental work, al-Bakri came up with a geographical dictionary of places names where he wrote down approximately 5,200 sites. Some Muslim scholars like al-Khwarizmi and Ibn Khaldun wrote on the relationship that established between environmental conditions and health in relation to establishment of new settlements. Medical geography, another branch in which the Arabian and Muslim scholars of Middle Ages made valuable contributions, is the medical geography. Large part of their writings is related to the study of discuss disease and their occurrences in various regions. Many of them believed that there exists a positive relationship between the disease and climate. Yaqut al-Hamawi stated those practicing medicines should have sufficient knowledge about the geography as well. Al-Maqdisi noted that the inhabitants of Baghdad had a low rate of life expectancy. The contribution of the scholars in the pharmacological studies cannot be ignored. They wrote extensively on the extraction of medications from herbs and plants. In conclusion, we can say Muslim geographers in the medieval period made valuable contributions to geographical thinking, unlike the Western counterparts. They are remembered for their concepts, paradigms, and theories, which still are of vital importance even in present times. The base their knowledge was much wider and enriched than the Christian scholars. Their interest in geography was the product of geographical surroundings, though it was purely theological in perspective. Thank you so much. Let me know about your feedback. Thank you.